What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. If you missed it yesterday, the Analog Pocket was announced. I did a full video breakdown of that thing. I am so excited for it. It looks really, really cool. It's going to be a handheld from Analog that's going to be able to play all types of Game Boy and Game Boy Advanced and Game Gear and Neo Geo Pocket Color all through hardware with FPGA. So I would check that video out. It's coming out next year, but I'm definitely going to try to get one so we can take a look at it here. As for today, though, we have a couple things to go over, including a very weird situation between Nintendo and Blizzard and Overwatch. It kind of seems like Nintendo is kind of forgetting, we'll say, that Overwatch came out, maybe conveniently. We'll talk a bit about that here today. And then also we're going to take a look at some financials from Capcom that seem to show an interesting change in the Switch and kind of where it places in Capcom's mind now. And then a patent from Sony that shows that they are pretty serious, it seems, about cloud gaming going forward. As always, guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure to hit the like button. It does help out. And get subscribed so you can stay up to date on all of the gaming news going on in the gaming world. And we're actually going to start today with The Outer Worlds. Now, The Outer Worlds, of course, coming out next week, and it is, I believe, coming out on the same day as Call of Duty. And I have to admit, The Outer Worlds looks pretty good, and I think that's the one I'm going to play first. I want to play the campaign for Call of Duty at least, but The Outer Worlds is probably the one I'm going to grab right away and start playing through that. But there was something that was a bit odd here, and that was this thought that there wasn't any type of PlayStation 4 Pro enhancements, which would kind of lean into the idea that Microsoft wants it to run better on their system or just completely. But the private division, as you're seeing here, tweeted out a bit of a correction just to make sure everyone was on the same page here after some publications went out. And it said The Outer Worlds is enhanced for both Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro. It includes 4K textures and resolution on Xbox One X and PC, and upsamples from 4K to 4K from 1440p on PS4 Pro. It looks great across all platforms, and we're excited for players to experience The Outer Worlds on October 25th. That sounds about right. I mean, we all know the PS4 Pro is not as powerful as the Xbox One X, so we'll have to upscale. Either way, though, the game itself looks great. I mean, we're talking about resolutions here above, 1080p, talking about 1440p and 4K and upscaling. I think most people were just looking to hear that it was taking advantage of the PlayStation 4 Pro and it wasn't just basically running on PlayStation 4 base level, because then it's, why do you have the Pro at that point? But good to see everything is good there. I'm going to grab it on the Xbox One X to see how that system fares with this game. And at 4K, that's good to hear. And it's coming out next week, so I'll be on that, and we'll see how that game is. Also, if you're a fan of The Witcher 3 and you're really enjoying it on the Switch, and you want, I guess, something else just with CD Projekt Red and Witcher theming all over it, it looks like PowerA has partnered with CD Projekt Red to bring out this controller that you're seeing here. It's a Witcher 3 PowerA controller. I've reviewed this controller, not this exact one with the Witcher logo on it and everything, but I've reviewed one similar to this with different branding and everything. These are ones that do take AA's, but they have kind of the macro buttons on the back. But this is officially licensed by Nintendo and CD Projekt Red with a 2-year limited warranty. Of course, runs through Bluetooth, so it'll sync up. And at this time, from what I can see, there's no release date on their website, but they are taking pre-orders, and it's going for the standard price as the other controllers at $49.99. Oh, and in a very weird move, today a game is coming out that probably would have done better on the Switch like last year or months ago even, basically before that Castlevania collection came out, because this is going up. It's so strange. As you're seeing here, this is the Versus, or the Arcade Archives versus Castlevania that's out today for $7.99. Now, this is the one from the arcade that is based on the NES game, so it's very, very similar, but it has a few small differences, like higher enemy damage, shorter time limit. Basically, it's just supposed to be harder because it's in the arcade, so they want to take your coins, and yeah, okay. So I don't really know why you would get this over the Castlevania collection, because you get a lot more value there. But I guess if you either want it just to be more difficult, or you just like the arcade version of Castlevania, then I guess you would pick this up. But it is out today. It's done by Hamster, actually did this one. And I mean, it's still Castlevania, but honestly, the Castlevania collection is probably the direction you should lean in. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's talk about Blizzard. Again, I know, right? Blizzard can't stay out of the news. And like I said, they're going to stay in the news going up to BlizzCon, and then probably just after BlizzCon, because that's going to be an event. We'll just say that. But it seems like Nintendo doesn't really want any part of this whole situation. They are actively trying to stay out of it, like completely, which is a shame, because Overwatch right now launching on the Switch should be a massively advertised game. I mean, it launched on the same day as The Witcher 3, and we're seeing Nintendo actually push The Witcher 3 pretty well. but they're not pushing Overwatch on the Switch, which is odd, but I guess if you really think about it, it kind of makes sense. Now, there are a lot of tweets that are going out there, and there's a few that are also summarizing. Here's one here from Storm Yorha saying, quickly throws Blizzard under the bus for canceling the event, completely ignores Overwatch's launch, and offers full refund for Overwatch, unlike any other eShop game. And this is very interesting because there are a lot of accounts that is happening. People are saying, hey, I called them up, and I said, I don't want this game anymore. I don't want Overwatch. I don't like what's happening with Blizzard. And apparently, Nintendo customer service has been, at least from what we're hearing, instructed to just refund it. That's it, like straight up. And you don't hear that a lot with Nintendo. There's a lot of pushback when it comes to you trying to get refunds for things, and it's a whole thing. But it seems like this one is straightforward. They say, okay, no problem, we're refunding this. And I'm just going to put this out there. If you have called them and wanted money back for ordering Overwatch from them, I guess pre-ordering it or buying it even, let me know if you had the same experience and you were able to just get your money back, no problem, no questions asked. Let me know down in the comments about that one. But something else that I noticed, I said, okay, well, let me check this out a little further. There is a news section on the Switch. So I went there and I said, okay, well, The Witcher, I know The Witcher's in there because that just came out. They're going to advertise that like crazy. Luigi's Mansion's coming up. That's in there. But there's nothing about Overwatch. I noticed that and I said, okay, okay, I think we all see what's going on here at this point. Blizzard, of course, is under a lot of controversy, and Nintendo, I think, they just want to stay clear of it. Nintendo's also partnering with Tencent, by the way, to make their way into China at some point in time. We keep hearing they're going to do it, and then we haven't really heard much outside of them just preparing to do it. So I don't think Nintendo wants to ruffle any feathers. They just want to stay out of the whole situation, and to a degree, I can understand why, because it's not Nintendo who's messing all this stuff up. It's Blizzard, and it's one of the worst times for Nintendo to launch a Blizzard game is right now, right? Because Overwatch it's not like it was a multi-platform game launching that day. It is a multi-platform game, but the brand new thing was that it's going to the Switch, and I'm sure Nintendo would have loved to have pushed that thing like crazy, but they are staying away. They did not tweet about it at all when it came out the other day on Twitter, which they tweeted about Witcher 3, which is still a weird thing, by the way, to see Nintendo tweeting about The Witcher 3, but they did nothing about Overwatch. So I'm not surprised necessarily. It makes sense to me to stay out of it, but it is a shame for Overwatch and fans of Overwatch who are really excited to see it come to the Switch because, to be honest, it's not going to do well on the Switch right now. People are getting refunds rather than buying it and telling their friends about it, and that's where we are. But I kind of hope Blizzard, because they're in this situation, obviously, but I hope they don't look at this and say, oh, well, no one wants to buy it on the Switch. No, just in general, it seems like no one wants to buy the stuff right now, like in general. And they're going to have to deal with BlizzCon coming up. There was also word coming out now from Twitter, as you're seeing here, that there was actually university students that were also banned. Yeah, so American university students were banned from Hearthstone. They were expecting it, though. They do make mention saying, happy to announce the AU Hearthstone team received a 6-month ban from competition. While delayed, I appreciate all players being treated equally and no one being above the rules. They kind of wanted to test Blizzard's stance, and they did their own thing where they held up a Free Hong Kong sign while on stream, even saying, I think, boycott Blizzard. So they wanted to get banned because they wanted to make sure everyone was being treated equally, but it took quite a while, actually, as they say. It was delayed, and they just seem they're okay with it. So it's still Blizzard heading into BlizzCon, all the controversy, protesting and everything. And like I said, Nintendo wants to stay out of it, but unfortunately for Overwatch, it's going to suffer on the Switch. Next up, let's talk about Sony, the PlayStation 5, and PlayStation Now. So one piece of news has now come out saying that PlayStation Now will indeed be on the PlayStation 5. Is that surprising? Not really. I mean, to me, that makes sense, right? You go, okay, yeah, the PlayStation 5, the latest PlayStation Now is on the PS4. It'd be weird if it didn't just move over. It's a service that, of course, taps to a server and says, hey, I'm ready to play some games. What do you have? And then they show them to you. So PS3 may actually be done through that. That's probably not what a lot of people want to hear, but that might just be the unfortunate reality, just based around the architecture and everything they went with and the confusing mess that they designed with the PlayStation 3. But something interesting seems to be happening. There is a patent that has been found. Here it is. You're seeing it now on the screen, and it shows a similar setup and similar controller to what we have heard about with Stadia. This controller would not sync to your system. It would actually sync to a Wi-Fi hotspot, for example, or a Wi-Fi location. And at that point, you would actually be syncing the controller to the servers rather than go to your system and then to the internet. So you would cut out your system completely and rely on basically, I guess, your router at that point to do all of it. The idea is that you can cut out your system from having to make the processes and translate data back and forth and everything. You'll just cut them out. That's one less step that can introduce latency or lag or anything through button presses. That's kind of the idea, and Stadia is doing that. I'm going to get that controller apparently next month, as I said yesterday, so we'll see how all of that goes down. I'm very interested to open it up, but this is currently just a patent, but it actually makes a lot of sense based on what Sony is trying to do right now with cloud gaming, which is they have now been working pretty heavily. Of course, they had a handshake agreement recently with Microsoft, and now we could see a controller that comes out that pretty much, based around what we're seeing in these patents, is the same thing that Stadia does, where you go between devices that aren't necessarily a PlayStation. So your phone, your computer, a tablet, and again, the controller isn't synced to any of those, so it never breaks connection until you go outside, I guess, and you're not connected to your router anymore. But it is interesting to see Sony lean into this, and it does make you wonder about the traditional console market 15, 20 years from now. I don't think this generation we're going into with the PlayStation 5 and the Scarlet and whatever Nintendo, I guess, comes up with in 3 or 4 years is like the last generation, right? Technically, Nintendo started this next generation, I guess, with the Switch, but I don't think it's going to be the last generation still. However, I think cloud gaming is going to have a massive focus by all of these companies. Next up, we'll talk about Pokemon Sword and Shield, because we did get a new trailer for some reveals, specifically Gigantamaxing different Pokemon. They told us about a few of them, and one of them is really funny looking. They put out a full trailer, and one of them, which is my favorite one right now, is Meowth, who becomes very long, it appears, very tall, very long. But then they also showed Pikachu, who gets huge, and then Eevee and Charizard. Charizard, of course, looked really, really cool. Charizard is like, the original here, right? He's like the cool Pokemon from back in the day, still getting these buffs, which is great. But they did show them all off and everything. They get new moves. Meowth appears to be similar to Piranha Plant, where it's going to be an early purchase bonus. So between November 15th and January 15th, as long as you are signed into the internet and use the option Mystery Gift, you'll just get Gigantamax Meowth, I guess. And that's okay. I mean, that's I guess, a good way to get people on board. However, most people are going to buy Pokemon anyway, and there you go. I don't think a lot of people need a push to get Pokemon. They didn't really need a push to get Smash either, though. But I guess it's a good idea just to get as many people in as you can, and technically it doesn't really cost them anything to do something like that. Gigantamaxing is still very interesting. Of course, it's supposed to be a temporary thing during battle that then wears off, and they keep showing us different Pokemon here, and I'm wondering how many forms they're going to have out before the game releases. And then I'm also wondering how many little updates like this they have ready. Are we just going to go through tons of them, or are they going to have one big blowout like a week ahead of the game launching in what is a pre-recorded direct of some kind? Interesting stuff there to think about. Let me know what you think, I guess, about some of these Gigantamaxed Pokemon. And our last bit of news, let's talk about an interesting shift over at Capcom, because they shared some financials for the past fiscal year and talked a bit about how everything's doing. Seems like they're doing pretty well, actually. And in fact, they even named Devil May Cry as one of their main franchises, so it sounds like we're going to be getting some more Devil May Cry going forward over the next couple of years, which is great, and hopefully that doesn't mean just more remasters of Devil May Cry 2, and it's at least the hope here. We'll see how all of that goes down. But one thing they showed on their balance sheets and kind of their reports about shipments is that the Switch and the Xbox have actually changed places. So they've been, of course, shipping physical games throughout the year and everything, and something they appear to have noticed is that the Switch has overtaken the Xbox One, despite not getting all of the releases that the Xbox One has now been getting. Of course, we're talking about, the big Resident Evils, like obviously the latest Resident Evil 7, of course. And then you see Devil May Cry show up there, Monster Hunter World. But here's actually the sheet they showed us, and the PlayStation 4 is crushing it, obviously, as we would expect, at 6,500 units. Those are in, I believe, millions. But then below that, there's the Switch at 1950 and the Xbox One at 1200. It's about a 40% jump going from the Xbox to the Switch. So it basically goes, in Capcom's eyes, for consoles, PS4, Switch, and then Xbox. So now it makes you wonder, what are they going to do with that going forward? Is the Switch getting to a point where they start to look at it much more seriously when it comes to like their bigger games, their big first-party stuff? here's actually a little slide that they showed us as well, showing some of the games that they released over the past fiscal year that would be included in this. So you really have to sit here and look at this and go, okay, all the Revelations, right, came out. They had Monster Hunter Generations, Ultra Street Fighter, but then you start to look at it, and the only things that really came together at the same time were things like Mega Man 11 and the X Legacy Collection 2, for example, X Legacy Collection. Otherwise, though, they were kind of older ports that went to the Switch, and you see some of the bigger ones that went to things like the Xbox and the PlayStation. So it does make you wonder, maybe Capcom has some stuff up their sleeves going forward. There are some games being rumored right now that maybe they have them at the Game Awards. I don't know, but interesting stuff there with Capcom. I want to see what kind of focus they start to move to the Switch, especially going into next generation when the other consoles are going to restart. Maybe it's time for the Switch to get its own, big Monster Hunter or something. We'll see. And we'll finish up the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This one is from Steven Saunders saying, I've purchased almost every WWE game since WWF No Mercy. This new 2K20 version looks so bad that I can now say I'm finally done buying these games. Way to go, 2K. And it's a shame. It really is. Because here's the thing. A lot of us, myself included, remember the old days of the wrestling games. Not even like, you can go back to the 64, how you did here with No Mercy, which, by the way, if they ever figured out how to redo No Mercy and release it, re-release it as like, some kind of remake, that would go nuts. The internet would catch on fire. It would be amazing. But even something as little as mentioning, which this has happened, by the way, as remaking or remastering Here Comes the Pain, which I still think is probably the best wrestling game that I can recall. That was on the PS2. That set the internet on fire as well, because people just don't like the newer ones. Just aren't that good. They're glitchy. They're frustrating visually. I mean, you just saw this last one. That's 2K20. It's terrible. It is amazing how it's a series that should sell easily, but they just, either they don't put the time, they don't put the money. It has to be a yearly series, I guess. It's all over the place. I mean, seriously, a wrestling game is something you should be able to continue to sell and then update going forward over the course of 2 or even 3 years, but yearly series, 2K, Take-Two. All right, apparently they're just going to put it out there. Well, let's see what Ukes does, because if they get that AEW license, that could be interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go to it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button. It really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it is Nintendo and Overwatch, and Nintendo kind of snubbing Overwatch because of what Blizzard's doing with them in China. It's a whole situation, and basically at the end of the day, it comes down to the developers who spent time porting this game to the Switch, and Overwatch kind of suffer because their game is not being advertised or seemingly sold very well. Also, what do you think about Sony and their controller that appears to mimic what Stadia is doing? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.